Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another video blog from Seoul, Korea. Today we're going to tackle a bit of a difficult topic. One of the topics that I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to talk about it and how exactly I would structure the whole video. So bear with me if one or two of the issues that I'm talking about today are maybe a little bit difficult to explain. What I want to talk about today is racism in Korea. And every time you talk about racism, it's a very controversial topic, of course. And I want to establish from the beginning a few things so that nobody gets a wrong idea about what I'm saying today. First of all, I really wanted to say that I'm well aware that racism is a global issue. That's not something that is only restricted to a certain country or a certain kind of people. And I also want to talk about that I really love being in Korea. I wouldn't be here for more than 1.5 years right now if I wouldn't enjoy living here. And if I, wouldn't like it. So basically, there were a few things that I wanted to establish right from the beginning. And at the same time, I also want to kind of explain why exactly I'm going to create this video. A lot of people were asking me about problems that I have in Korea or things that I personally don't like. And this is one of the biggest issues that I have with Korea. And it's also something that not only me, but a lot of foreign friends that I have experienced in the past. Every single time you have a new person coming to Korea to visit for a week or two, and you sit together with the people that have been living here for quite some time, it comes up at some point, and you try to explain what exactly or how to exactly it affects your daily life, but it's always a little bit difficult. So just to make sure that everyone's on the same page here, I love being in Korea. It's a lovely country. I know that not all the Koreans are racist, but a lot of people seem to assume that Asia and Korea in particular is like heaven on earth. It's the motherland of esports. It's where esports grew, where esports developed, and a lot of things here are just amazing. Korea is awesome, don't get me wrong. But there are also a few downsides to Korea, and this is definitely one of them, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit today. The first time when I really experienced the racism the subtle racism that you have in Korea was actually after maybe 6 or 7 weeks when I first came here, and I was going to go shopping with Naniwa and Jinro, two StarCraft 2 professional players, in case you don't know about them. So we were riding one of the subways, and in the subway you have a few reserved seats that's for the elderly, for pregnant women, and if someone is injured, whatever. So all of those seats were free, and we were standing right next to them. We were just standing there. We were in a subway that was kind of empty. There were not a lot of people in there. Most of the seats were taken. But we were just kind of standing. We were talking a little bit. The entire subway was talking. We were talking on exactly the same level. And at some point, an older guy was sitting next to us in one of those reserved seats. And at some point, we realized that he was probably a little bit drunk, and he started shouting at us. And we were like, whoa, what's going on here? And Jinro back then was the one who really had the best Korean from the three of us. So he said, guys, I actually think that he's insulting us like crazy right now, and I'm not quite sure what's going on here. So I was going through my head and was like, okay, well, there might be some social differences here, difference in culture, I don't know. So I was just looking around. I'm like, well, we're standing here. We just talk on a normal volume. We are not occupying anyone's space. We are not taking one of those seats up or anything. We actually just stand here so that we don't do that we don't stand in anyone's way. And he just kept going on, the older guy that is, and he was insulting us the entire time. And a few of the things even I picked up. I mean, my Korean at that point was good enough to know what he was kind of going on about. So he basically just told us to get the fuck out of his country and was ranting about foreigners. Most of the people in the subway are also a little bit embarrassed about it. And I got really mad. I got really mad at this point because I was standing there and was like, dude, we are standing here so that everyone else can sit. We didn't take anyone's space. We didn't do anything. And I have to admit that at some point I just started to insult him in German. I was like, well, if you insult me in the language that I don't understand, then I'm going to insult you in German, which you don't understand. And don't go all racist on me. I'm German. We invented that shit, buddy. So that was basically what happened. We really didn't know what exactly we were supposed to do. I mean, we couldn't hit the guy. He was a really old fart. So we had to go out at the next station, which was really annoying to us too, because he told us the entire time to get the fuck out of the train, out of this country, and we actually had to leave. So he kind of got what he wanted. But we want to go shopping, so we just left the train. But that was the first time when I realized that there are definitely a few issues in Korea and that the country is not as perfect as everyone always described it. And yeah, that was kind of the first encounter. And following that, a lot of the things just kind of fell in place because when you curse in Korean, it's always things like shibal or shibalseki, that it's like really offensive language. It means like fuck you and motherfucker and all these things. So a lot of the Koreans, what they actually do is like when they start cursing, they just start with the sh sound and then just stop. It's like and then just stop like a beep in television, for example, when you watch American television. So another example that I have is when I was riding a cab with Grubby. Grubby was over in Korea to train for the GSL, train for GSTL too, and we were riding a cab like late at night. So it was back in winter, and I actually had a little bit of a cold, so that's why I didn't realize it at first. But the driver was always making these weird noises, and I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. Every time we kept talking in English, suddenly the driver was going all crazy on us. And at first I really thought that the guy had a cold and was just basically sneezing or whatever. And then Grubby started to get really mad. And that's when I realized that the guy was cursing us the entire time. Every time we started to talk in English, he was getting really angry at us. I got to the point where we actually turned around and told him, hey, listen, buddy, drive us. You're a cab driver, and stop like insulting us or stop like going all racist on us just because we are talking a language you don't understand. That's not our fault. And that was example back then. And there were a couple of other things, like actually, just a few days ago, I recorded a video in this very place, in this very cafe. I was sitting here, and the whole cafe is packed. I mean, I'm now in a corner because I don't want to bother anyone with a camera, but the entire cafe is packed, and a lot of people are here talking. The volume is pretty loud. The microphone is pretty good, so it doesn't really pick that up. But everyone is talking. So I'm sitting here on my own with the camera just pointed at me and talking. And just the other day, like 2 days ago, right to my left, there was a guy sitting there. And they were also talking. At some point in the middle of the video, I just realized that he was pointing at me. So he points at me, and the entire time he goes like, shh, shh. And he tells me like to shut up. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? Everyone's talking. I'm not louder than anyone else. I'm not bothering anyone. And I tried to ignore him because I was in the middle of the video. It was 10 minutes in. And the guy just keeps going on, tells me to shut up and to be quiet. And I'm like, what? So at some point I actually stopped the video. I had to redo the whole thing later on. And he was just like really going crazy at me and was like, I should basically just be quiet. And yeah, and I'm like, what is your problem? Everyone in here is talking. I'm actually like the person in the room who talks on the lowest level, I guess. I'm not bothering anyone. And he was just going on about how I shouldn't talk and how I just sit there. And I'm like, yeah, just fuck you. I was really mad. And it's just like, it's these subtle things that always happen here. And they happen quite often. And at first you don't really get it. So people who only come here, let's say for holidays, usually don't pick up on this. But if you live here for a while, you will have all these weird incidents. And at some point you start to make sense of it. A lot of those guys are actually just really annoyed because they don't understand the language that you're speaking, so they don't speak English. And it's also because of the history of Korea. A lot of them really are a little bit agitated with the Americans and blame America for the entire situation with North Korea, for example. So I don't really want to talk about the background of all these things, but Korea and also Japan are very isolated Asian countries and just now start to open up and to be a little bit more globalized. So especially the older generation has a lot of prejudices towards foreigners and also, of course, towards Americans in particular. And that's one of the things where all of this clicks in. If you talk to the younger people in Korea, it's not that much of an issue, but English is in general on a really, really basic level here, and it's very difficult to communicate in English with the Korean population or with most of them. If you're just in a restaurant, it's easy because you just can point and say what you want, so that's not an issue at all. But having an actual conversation and talking about these things is not that easy. I actually raised the topic with a lot of the Koreans that I know, and all of them kind of agreed with me and were like, yeah, it's actually true. Like, a lot of the people in Korea are quite racist, they have a lot of prejudices, and it shows especially in the older generation. It's a very different racism, by the way, than when you compare it to, let's say, the more Western racism. Because when I hear about racism for the first time, what always kind of associates in my mind is like people getting beat up and ending up in hospital, for example. That's not really the case, which is also because Korea has a very weird way of conflict management. It's actually something that I'm going to talk about in the video in the future. But everything is just more below the surface here, so it's a little bit more subtle than it would happen in other languages or in other countries and other cultures. But in here, it's definitely an issue. And I know that a lot of people will be just like, Khaldor, you don't understand this. It's an Asian culture, and it's very, very different. You have to respect your elders and blah, blah, blah. I know all that. Believe me, I've been living here for 1.5 years, and I was in Asia before. That's definitely not the case. That's just a few douchebags that exist here, and that just behave in a very different way and actually execute this entire racism thing. And once again, I want to point out that I'm not saying that all Koreans are racist, but it's definitely a part of the culture. It's definitely an issue in Korea, and it's something that all foreigners struggled with. One of the things where this became very transparent was in 2012. NBC Korea, which is one of the TV stations that they have here, they released a video, and it was very, very hostile towards foreigners. It was one of the most racist documentaries that I've ever seen. What they basically stated is that the foreigners in Korea are a big problem because they kind of cheat on Korean women. Most of us have, of course, HIV, and we are spreading it like crazy throughout Korea. Like, we get women pregnant and then we just leave the country and things like this. You can look that thing up. If you go to YouTube, there's an upload there. Just look for NBC Korea and racism, and it will be, I think it's actually the first link, but it's definitely going to be under the top 3. So you can look that up and have a quick look. There are subtitles in there as well, so that you can understand what they're saying. And it's really funny. It's like crazy what kind of bullshit they state and how they just edited the entire video. You definitely know those videos. It's like one of those documentaries that's not actually like based on anything, but just trying to just jump on a bandwagon and talk about the prejudices and confirm them. So it's really bad. When I saw it for the first time, I was actually shocked. Not because I haven't seen videos like this before, but you wouldn't air that on national TV. That's something that just doesn't happen in the Western culture anymore. And it was really, like, I don't want to say frightening, but it was a little bit concerning to see that something like this is really being shown on national TV, and that a lot of people seem to think like this. And of course, if you see that on a national program, a lot of the people who watch that video will actually believe what they see there. And it's kind of crazy. I was going through these things, and all those accusations that they just pulled out are just simply so not true. They claim that the innocent Korean girls actually only want to learn Korean. That's why they talk to foreigners, and that's the only goal that I have. But foreigners, of course, the only thing that foreigners want is to have sex with them. Like, really, really weird stuff. And then they say like, well, there are just a few Korean women that are actually attracted to foreigners, and they act in a very they show behavior which is not proper because they're way too affectionate in public, and basically just single those women out at being like a few individuals. And at the same time, they talk about the foreigners that misbehave in Korea, that, for example, really borrow money from someone, from their girlfriend, and just bail and get out of the country. That's not an individual case, but that it just is something that all foreigners do. So I was blown away by that. I saw that and I was like, oh my God. And it's still a thing that a lot of people here talk about, and there were like hundreds of videos that foreigners in Korea published about it. So it's very, very different. When you go through the video, by the way, in case that you actually watch it, one of the things that is definitely true is that in a more Western society, we are not really shy with showing affection in public. In Korea, this is a completely different thing. And this is, of course, a very cultural topic right now. So this is where racism and culture have to be definitely divided, because if you kiss a girl on the street, and especially when you are in a more of a, let's say, a conservative area. There are a couple of areas, for example, in Korea where there are a lot of foreigners. There are also a lot of more Western Koreans. So back in those areas, it wouldn't be a problem. But if you're more of a traditional area and you start making out with your girlfriend on the street, that is really rude. And a lot of Koreans will immediately start to curse you and just to completely point at you and tell you to stop that and get really, really angry. So this is just a different culture. But that's also one of the things that I'm going to talk about in the future. I really don't want to go into too many details right now because I feel it's a bit of a different topic and something that we should probably talk about in a later video. But that just in case you watch the video, just so you have that background so that you can actually understand why they are talking about it this way. But it's one of those things where I was like looking at it and was like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is actually happening here. So these are just a few things that are really weird here in Korea and that are actually like bad. And once again, I want to point out that I love living in this country, but every now and then it just gets a little bit too much. There are so many things in Korea where especially the older generations, like the ajumas and ajishi, actually really misbehave and behave in a very rude way. And people always try to argument that the elder people in Asia are being treated differently and that you should show them respect. And that's definitely true. I mean, that's a cultural differences. So that's not something where you say, well, but that's not how it works in the West. I live here, so I have to get used to local customs. But at the same time, there's a huge difference between someone that expects respect and someone who just behaves like an asshole. just to be frank here. So that's something that I'm also going to talk about in one of the other videos. But for today, the only thing that I really wanted to talk about is that there is actually racism in Korea, that it's a bit of a different kind of racism that we have in the Western societies, being in Europe or being in America. It's a little bit more subtle, but it's nonetheless very insulting and very, very annoying. And yeah, that's basically the only point that I wanted to make right now. Talking about a few of the things that are not that great in Korea. It's definitely one of the things that annoys me quite a bit. And yeah, in the future, we're also going to talk about things that are pretty awesome here, so don't worry about that. I mean, if you didn't get the vibe already in the last few videos, that I really like living here and that it's an awesome country, then I want to make this clear once again. But yeah, definitely just realize that when you come over here at some point, even if you're only here for some weeks, that's something that you might encounter. If you're only here for a holiday, you probably might not. But if you live here for a longer period of time, for a few months and maybe even for a year or two, it's definitely something that's going to happen to you as well. I have a few more examples that I don't really want to go into, smaller things that happened to me in the past, but it's definitely a problem in Korea, and a lot of the Koreans are aware of it, especially the younger generation. They are not too happy about it and quite embarrassed when something happens in public that they witness. And I also feel that it's going to fade out a little bit more in the future. You have to realize that Korea is a very isolated country. I was talking about it a little bit earlier, but it is still very isolated from the Western cultures. And with now even more Koreans in school learning to speak English and being a little bit more open-minded, it gets a lot easier, and it will definitely change over the next few decades. But today it's still a topic, and that's basically all that I want to talk about today. So thank you very much for watching the video, and I'll make sure that I'm gonna record another video blog very, very soon. If you like the videos and the entire playlist, then check them out on my YouTube channel. Make sure that you upvote the video and subscribe to the channel if you like it. And I would also not mind if you would follow me on Twitter @Khaldor. That's it for the day. Hope you guys have a peachy day. See you soon. Bye-bye.